I met Ava during a late summer in Florence. I was 29 and working as a freelance tech consultant, living out of a suitcase, trading hours for euros and espresso. She was 24, a recent graduate from an architecture program in Milan, there with friends celebrating the end of school. I met her in a bookstore cafe. She was reading Calvino, I was skimming through a translation of Machiavelli, and we ended up talking for 3 hours. It felt easy, like meeting someone I already knew but hadn't seen in years. When I left Florence, we stayed in touch. Messages turned into video calls turned into weekend flights, and by the following spring she had moved into my place in Boston. She found a job at a boutique architecture firm downtown while I took on larger clients and began building a name for myself. We worked hard, but it didn't feel like a grind. We were young and ambitious, feeding off each other's energy. When I finally proposed, it was during a snowstorm in Vermont. We were tucked into a cabin with whiskey, bad reception, and nothing but time. She said yes before I finished the question. Our wedding was small, family, a few close friends, no frills. We got married under a maple tree in upstate New York, rented a house big enough to sleep everyone, and cooked meals together for 3 days. Ava designed the invitations herself and wore a second-hand dress she had altered with silk she dyed. I remember watching her move between conversations, glass of wine in hand, eyes bright, and thinking she was the kind of woman who would make life feel full no matter what direction it went. After the wedding, things accelerated. I launched my own tech company, and Ava left her firm to start an independent design studio. We were working 12-hour days, sometimes more, but it didn't matter. We were doing it together. We shared an office space for a while, her with her physical models and swatches, me with whiteboards and code on screens, and even then, we never got tired of each other's presence. We still found time for weekend trips, Sunday morning pancakes, spontaneous museum dates. When the business took off, we bought our first home, a brownstone near the Charles River. 3 stories, open floor plan, more space than we needed but exactly what we wanted. She filled it with plants and soft light. I installed the sound system and turned the basement into a media room. Every corner of that place had our fingerprints on it. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like ours. Money came in faster than we expected. Within 3 years, we'd both grown our client bases to the point where we were picking projects instead of chasing them. We hired teams. We started thinking long-term, real estate investments, travel, maybe even a retreat property somewhere quiet. We were still young, still curious, and we didn't let the success slow us down. From the outside, we looked like the picture of partnership, 2 self-made people in love, building a life of art and logic, structure and possibility. And from the inside, it felt that way, too. Our daily routine had settled into something almost elegant. I woke up early, before sunrise, and made coffee. Ava preferred sleeping in, always had. I'd sit by the window in the kitchen, reading emails while the city began to stir. Around 7:30, I'd hear her footsteps, bare feet on hardwood, soft as breath. She'd wrap her arms around my shoulders from behind, rest her chin there for a second, and then move toward the French press. We didn't always speak right away. Sometimes mornings were quiet, filled with the kind of silence that exists only between people who truly know one another. Our offices were only 10 minutes apart, but we rarely commuted together. Ava liked to walk, said it helped her think. I drove most days. I'd pass her sometimes, on her side of the street, her headphones in, her face turned upward toward the light. She always looked unbothered, like she lived a few inches above the rest of the world. I never honked or called out. Just watched her until traffic pulled me forward. We worked long hours but always came home for dinner. Ava loved to cook. Not just food, she made meals. Tables set with linen napkins, candles lit, even if it was just a Tuesday night and we were eating pasta. I handled cleanup, always did. She said she liked the rhythm of cooking but hated the mess. That was fine by me. It became a kind of ritual. Her cooking, my clearing. Wine poured. Music low. We entertained often, friends from work, her old classmates, clients I wanted to impress. Ava was an effortless host. She floated through conversations, remembered people's names, told stories that made people laugh. It wasn't performance. It was just who she was. People were drawn to her. I never resented it. I liked watching her talk to others, how animated she became, the way her hands moved, the way people leaned in. When we traveled, we did it right. Not extravagantly, just intentionally. We rented homes instead of staying in hotels. She'd find places with character, stone cottages in rural France, tiny houses in Iceland, a floating home once in Vancouver. She said it helped her understand how space changes people. I just liked waking up next to her in new places, hearing her voice bounce off walls we hadn't touched yet. Professionally, we both kept growing. I sold a controlling share in my company to a private firm, stayed on as an advisor, and started angel investing. Ava's design work caught the attention of a few international publications, and soon she was consulting on luxury residential projects in Europe and Southeast Asia. She traveled more than I did, but she always came home. Always kissed me hello like she'd been gone years, even if it had only been 4 days. We had money, but we didn't talk about it much. It came, it sat, it grew. Our lives didn't change dramatically. We just had more freedom. Ava started sketching a line of minimalist furniture. I thought about writing a book. We were restless people who had managed to build a life that let us keep moving. We weren't chasing happiness. We were living inside it. The rhythm we lived by was one most people envied. It wasn't just the financial freedom or the travel or the social circle, it was the way we operated as a unit. Ava and I had this unspoken language. She could glance across a room and I'd know it was time to leave. I could touch her hand under a table and she'd instantly soften, like we'd returned to center. We didn't fight much, not because we avoided hard things, but because we respected each other's space. Ava needed solitude sometimes. I needed structure. We gave that to each other. Our house became a sort of quiet monument to who we were. Ava designed most of it herself. We didn't hire a decorator. She picked every fixture, every shade of white for the walls, every piece of furniture sourced from craftsmen or design studios she admired. She hated clutter, loved clean lines and warm wood. Her favorite room was the library upstairs, a sun-drenched space with a window seat and an old record player she'd found in a shop outside Copenhagen. Sometimes she'd put on a jazz record, stretch out on the bench, and just disappear for an hour or two. She said it made her feel outside of time. I worked from the converted garage, a sleek office that opened to the garden she curated in the spring. Ava planted low-maintenance greenery, ornamental grasses, lavender and eucalyptus. She said even design needed to breathe. On Fridays, we'd open the back doors and have dinner outside, wine on the little iron table she had shipped from Italy. We never needed to talk much on those nights. It was enough to just be. We weren't flashy people. Ava didn't post photos of our vacations or our dinners or the gifts I gave her. She was private, almost defiantly so. She'd say, if it's real, why would you need to prove it to anyone else? I liked that about her. In a world where everyone was always documenting everything, Ava lived as if no one was watching. She was most herself when no one was trying to interpret her. We did everything with intention. Date nights were still important to us, even after 6 years of marriage. We took turns planning them. One week I'd surprise her with tickets to a rooftop screening downtown, the next she'd book a wine tasting and turn it into a weekend away. We didn't miss anniversaries. We still bought each other books. Ava wrote notes on the inside covers, little one-line thoughts that always felt like poems meant only for me. Our closest friends joked that we were the most stable couple in the group. We hosted dinners, gave advice, played mediator during their squabbles. Ava was always diplomatic, measured, calm. I think people trusted her because she never judged them. She made others feel seen, even in their flaws. That wasn't something you could fake. We had goals, too. Ava wanted to open a design gallery. I was sketching out plans for a startup incubator. We weren't done dreaming. We just weren't in a rush anymore. Success had given us room to slow down. At the center of it all was us, still choosing each other, still curious, still reaching. From the outside and from within, it looked like we had built something solid. Something rare. And we had. The 7th year of our marriage was the quietest. Not dull, not disconnected, just steady. We traveled less that year. Ava had taken on a large residential project in Santa Fe, and I was in the middle of advising a biotech firm through a difficult acquisition. Our days were full but less dynamic, more routine. Still, there was comfort in that. We'd wake up, have breakfast together when we could, and then retreat into our separate corners of the world. Evenings were slower, more reading, less noise. We started going on long walks through the neighborhood after dinner. Ava said it helped her sleep. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we walked in silence. Either way, it felt like a shared ritual, like we were still moving in the same direction even if we weren't talking about the destination as much anymore. Ava's gallery idea took shape during that time. She began holding private viewings of her designs in our home, curated like miniature exhibitions. It wasn't public. She only invited select people, clients, designers, collectors she trusted. I helped where I could, setting up lighting, moving furniture, managing RSVPs. It was her vision, but I liked that I was still part of it. She always made room for me, even if she didn't always say it out loud. We also hosted fewer social gatherings. Not for lack of friends, just less appetite for noise. Ava said she felt overstimulated sometimes. Wanted more time to think. I understood. We both had evolved, quieter, more inward. The energy of our early years had given way to something calmer. I don't think either of us saw it as a loss. Just a shift. Our finances remained strong. The investments had matured, and passive income made day-to-day work feel more like choice than obligation. We spent more time on things that mattered to us. Ava became more involved with a nonprofit that taught design in underserved schools. I started mentoring younger entrepreneurs. The money allowed us freedom, but neither of us was interested in simply drifting. We even looked into property in Spain, just out of curiosity. A small coastal town Ava had once visited with her mother. She found a listing for a stone house with a garden that overlooked the sea. We didn't buy it. But we talked about it a lot. What it might feel like to live somewhere without meetings, without calendars, without a constant stream of deadlines. Just us, and time, and space. Everything felt settled. Not final, but steady. We hadn't changed the way we spoke to each other. We still had in-jokes, still passed each other in the hallway and touched each other lightly on the back. We still said, "Love you," out loud, always. We still planned small surprises, concert tickets tucked into a drawer, a new record for her collection, a hand-drawn sketch folded into my bag. There was no tension. No distant looks. No arguments. If anything, it felt like we had grown more aligned. Like we had found the quiet rhythm people spend years trying to create. Ava still smiled when she walked through the door. I still looked forward to hearing her voice when she called. We still kissed each other goodnight. It was late autumn when Ava started acting different. Not cold. Not distant. Just harder to read. It began with the little things, the way she responded to questions with a slight delay, or how she started leaving her phone in another room during dinner, only to check it in the hallway between courses. She never used to do that. She also started going out more. Not dramatically, not with flair or defensiveness. Just more. A gallery opening here, a meet-up with a former classmate there. Most of it made sense, she'd become more involved in the design community again, and her name was floating around more. She was being invited to private showings, industry mixers, workshops. I encouraged it. I told her she should go, meet people, grow her gallery connections. And she did. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek before heading out. Always said she wouldn't be too late. Sometimes she was. But it never felt worth asking about. Ava had always been independent. That was part of why I'd loved her in the first place. She still made time for our dinners. Still laughed at my dry jokes, still sent me photos of strange buildings she saw on her walks, still curled up next to me on the couch with her legs folded beneath her. But there was a kind of quiet preoccupation in her now, like her mind was working through something she wasn't ready to share yet. I didn't press her. I figured it was work. The gallery was taking more of her attention than she let on. Or maybe she was just in her head more than usual, thinking about the next step, the next big idea. She'd always been prone to pulling inward when something was forming creatively. One night, she came home from a dinner out and went straight to the guest bathroom. She closed the door quietly behind her. I didn't think much of it, but I realized, later, she hadn't said goodnight. I found her already asleep, turned to the wall. I thought about waking her to say something, but didn't. It wasn't like her. But maybe she was just tired. Everyone has off days. She began scheduling short weekend trips, 2 nights here, 3 nights there. She said she was visiting old friends from design school, or staying with her mother in Connecticut. Sometimes she brought back little gifts. An espresso cup from a cafe in Hudson. A linen scarf she said reminded her of one she used to own in Italy. I never asked for details. She always told me enough to make it make sense. And besides, she'd earned it. She'd worked hard. If she wanted to take space for herself, who was I to question that? We still made time together, though it required more planning than before. I started adding little, notes in the calendar, dinner out, movie night, a new exhibit. She always said yes, always smiled when I suggested something. But she didn't suggest things back as often. That was new. I noticed it, quietly. But people change. People shift. It didn't feel threatening. Just, new. It wasn't just the schedule changes. It was the pacing of things, how everything between us began to slow down in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Ava didn't pull away. She didn't become cruel or impatient. But she wasn't as available. Her presence was diluted. She started sleeping later on weekends, often hours after I was up. I'd make coffee and work through emails in the kitchen, occasionally listening for her steps overhead. They'd come, eventually, but later and later. When she did wake, she moved slower, quieter, like someone passing through a place rather than living in it. I'd ask how she slept. She'd shrug, sometimes say, weird dreams, or just, fine, and head to the shower. She was still affectionate, but not in the spontaneous way she used to be. No more surprise touches while I was cooking, no playful distractions while I worked late. Instead, affection came through routine, the evening glass of wine, the kiss on the cheek, the light hand on my shoulder when walking past. Nothing felt wrong, exactly. Just, flattened. Her appetite changed, too. She became more selective, picking at food she used to love, skipping meals entirely some nights. I ate earlier, she'd say, or, I'm not that hungry tonight. It didn't seem like a health issue. More like a shift in rhythm. One I couldn't find a beat for. The gallery kept her busy, and I respected that. But something in the way she talked about it had changed. She used to come home excited, telling me about the artists she'd discovered, the visitors who stopped by, the way light hit the walnut shelves in the late afternoon. Now, her updates were more guarded. Polite. It was good, she'd say. Tiring, though. And then there were the calls. Short ones, always taken in another room. A quick, "Hey, 1 sec," and then she'd step into the hall or the guest room and close the door. I could hear the low murmur of her voice behind the wood, but never the words. She'd return a few minutes later, eyes unreadable, say something vague, just a logistics call, or vendor issue, and pour herself another glass of wine. I didn't question it. Maybe I should have. But Ava was private by nature. And I didn't want to become the kind of partner who made everything into an interrogation. So I focused on the constants. Our shared routines. The way we still watched films on Friday nights, still exchanged articles we thought the other would find interesting. We still planned a trip for the fall, nothing exotic, just a quiet rental near the coast. She seemed to like the idea. Said the ocean sounded good. I clung to those moments. They reminded me of who we were. Who we still might be. But when I looked at her, really looked at her, I began to notice something else. She had become more careful. Measured. Like every move was being weighed against something I couldn't see. And I didn't know what that meant. Only that it was new. By winter, it felt like I was sharing a home with someone who had started living in another one. Not physically, Ava was still there most nights, but mentally, emotionally, she had begun retreating into corners I didn't have the key to. We still had conversations, still shared meals, but her eyes seemed to glide past me more often, like she was there without fully being with me. She spent more time out of the house, mostly in the evenings. It wasn't suspicious on the surface, gallery appointments, dinner meetings, a few overnight trips that she described vaguely as creative retreats with other designers. I didn't press. I'd never been the type to keep score or question her independence. I trusted her. That had always been the unspoken foundation between us. But I started to notice that she never offered detail unless I asked. And even when I did, her answers came packaged too neatly. It was nice, she'd say. Productive. Or, we talked about a joint installation, maybe this summer. I didn't recognize the names she mentioned. I didn't ask to see photos. I wasn't sure if I didn't want to invade her space, or if part of me was afraid of what I might find in it. She also became more protective of her devices. Her phone, once left on counters or nightstands, now stayed with her constantly. She kept it face down. She started using the guest room more often again, sometimes to take calls, other times just to get space to think. She'd light candles in there, close the door halfway, and let jazz or ambient playlists play at low volume for hours. Sometimes I'd pass by and catch a glimpse of her sitting cross-legged on the floor, flipping through sketchbooks. Other times, the room would be empty but the scent of her perfume would linger. The intimacy between us changed. She was still affectionate in passing, still kind, but the weight behind it had lessened. There was no malice, just absence. She no longer reached for my hand under the covers. She no longer pulled me into long kisses when I returned from a trip. She didn't stop touching me. She just stopped needing to. We still talked about work, still discussed mutual acquaintances, still laughed on occasion. But it felt more like the way old friends communicate, people who once shared everything but had slowly become guests in each other's story. One night, I found her crying in the kitchen. Not sobbing, just quietly wiping her face with the back of her hand while staring at her reflection in the microwave door. When I asked what was wrong, she smiled too quickly, like she'd practiced it. Just tired, she said. You know how I get this time of year. I nodded. I didn't push. Because maybe I was tired too. Tired of not knowing what had shifted. Tired of guessing. Still, I believed that if there was something beneath it all, it was probably about the gallery, or some creative burnout, or maybe even something medical she hadn't yet found words for. Never once did I imagine it had to do with someone else. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind we usually reserved for doing nothing. I'd made coffee, left the windows open, and was halfway through reading an article when Ava came down the stairs wearing her robe, hair still damp from a shower. She didn't say anything at first, just stood at the bottom step, looking at me like she'd forgotten who I was. Then she said, "We need to talk." I closed the magazine. "Okay." She didn't sit. She stood across from me, arms folded, not defensive exactly, more like she was bracing herself. Then came the sentence that split the air cleanly in two. "I don't want to be exclusive anymore." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "I mean, I want an open relationship. I want to be able to see other people. I already have. A few times." The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was dense. Full of every moment we'd shared stacked silently behind us. She continued. "Your friend Marcus. I've been with him. A few times. While you thought I was visiting my mom. Or out with Nicole. I wasn't. I didn't move. I couldn't." My brain stalled somewhere between understanding her words and refusing to let them land. She kept going. "I'm not ashamed of it. I'm just tired of pretending I'm satisfied. You're good to me. But it's not enough. Physically. Emotionally, maybe too. I feel trapped. We built this amazing life and now it feels like I can't move in it without asking for permission." Her voice didn't crack. She wasn't emotional. It was all logic, all cold articulation, like she was reading off a presentation she'd rehearsed in her head 100 times. "I'm not asking for your blessing," she said. "But I am being honest. I want freedom. I want to explore without sneaking around. And I want to keep things civil between us. You keep the house. I'd like a monthly allowance, enough to travel, keep my apartment comfortable, nothing crazy." I finally spoke. "You want an open relationship, funded by me?" "Yes," she said. "You're in a position to make this easier than it has to be. I'm being honest with you now, and I think that should count for something." I stared at her, trying to reconcile this woman with the Ava I had known. The one who used to sketch in bed with her head on my shoulder. The one who laughed at my terrible accents. The one who cried during documentaries and planted herbs in the spring like it meant something. But that version of her had gone somewhere I couldn't follow. "I'm not interested in ending this with drama," she said, as if she was doing me a kindness. "I just want a different kind of life now. You can too, if you want. You could meet someone. We don't have to make this ugly." She had no idea. Not yet. But she would. I didn't speak right away. She stood there, arms still crossed, as if she were the reasonable one. As if what she'd said was just another point in some long, fair negotiation. She had no shame. No trace of guilt. Just expectation. And something inside me broke. It didn't crack. It snapped, like a tension cable pulled too tight for too long. "You need to get the hell out of my house," I said, slowly. She blinked. "What?" I stepped toward her. "You heard me. Pack your things. Every last piece of clothing, every art book, every overpriced candle. I want it gone. You can go play your little self-exploration fantasy somewhere else." Her mouth opened, stunned. "You're being ridiculous." I pointed toward the stairs. "Go pack. Or I'll do it for you, and I won't be gentle." She hesitated, only for a second, then turned and stormed upstairs. I followed a minute later, grabbed a box from the basement, and started throwing her stuff into it. She screamed at me to stop. I didn't. I tore her clothes from the closet, cleared her shelves with one arm, tossed scarves, sketchbooks, and toiletries into garbage bags. She kept yelling. I didn't care. I dumped everything by the front door. Called a rideshare. When it arrived, I tossed her bags onto the porch. "You've got 10 minutes, I told her. Then I'm locking the door." She didn't cry. Not once. Just glared at me like I had betrayed her. When the car pulled away, I stood in the hallway for a full 5 minutes, staring at the door. My hands were shaking. My heart wouldn't slow down. I hadn't realized how hot anger could feel when it wasn't loud. I didn't yell. I didn't throw punches. But I was burning. And I knew exactly where to aim the fire next. Marcus. He was slick. Always had been. Perfect smile, perfect stories. He'd known me since college. Called me his brother. And now I knew what that had ever meant to him. What he didn't know was that I remembered his little confession from a year ago, some drunken ramble at a New Year's party about not filing taxes for 3 years. I'd laughed at the time. Told him to get it together. But now I made a call. Not to him. To a contact I had in a compliance firm. I laid it all out, his history, his debt load, his pattern of missed payments. I knew exactly what to say to trigger the right kind of audit. It didn't take long. Within 3 weeks, Marcus's accounts were frozen. His house, over-leveraged and already behind on payments, was seized. The car, leased in a false name with falsified income statements, gone. Then I went public. I sent screenshots, emails, time-stamped logs of Ava's retreats. Nothing doctored, nothing illegal, just the truth, wrapped in hard documentation. I sent them to mutual friends, to Ava's gallery sponsors, to Marcus's employer. Quiet, strategic devastation. Reputation, gone. Partnerships, pulled. They'd built their fun on the illusion of discretion. I ripped the curtain down. Ava tried texting me. Then calling. Then emailing. I didn't respond. Let them build a new life together, if there was anything left of it. Me. I wasn't healed. But I wasn't done either. In the weeks that followed, the wreckage unfolded exactly the way I'd intended, not fast, not loud, but complete. Marcus lost everything. The audit hit harder than I expected. Apparently, he hadn't just avoided taxes, he'd falsified reports for a shell company he used to inflate his income for car and home loans. The IRS dug deep. Once they saw the inconsistencies, they kept pulling threads. He tried to bluff. Then he tried to blame. It didn't work. His home was foreclosed within a month. I saw the listing hit the auction site one morning over coffee. It made me laugh, dark, bitterly satisfying. His car vanished a week later, towed in the early hours. I didn't witness it, but someone sent me a photo. No note. Just an image of his Audi behind a tow truck, taillights flickering under a street lamp. His employer? Gone. I had made sure of that. I'd sent them an anonymous file, discrepancies in project billing, timecard inconsistencies, messages to Ava on company time, from his work email, explicit ones. I made sure they saw everything they needed to question his judgment, his boundaries, and his character. They terminated him by the end of the week. Unprofessional conduct was the official line. But we both knew what it really meant, untrustworthy. As for Ava, she didn't fall as hard. But she fell publicly. I forwarded the gallery sponsors the same file. Included her request for financial support from me after admitting to cheating. Not framed. Just quoted. Let them make their own judgments. Her upcoming show was cancelled within days. No official explanation. But I saw her name vanish from the promotional materials, just like that. Her phone calls continued for a while. I never picked up. Her last voicemail was the only one I listened to all the way through. I know you hate me, she said, voice calm, strained, but I was honest, at least in the end. Doesn't that count for something? I deleted it without answering. Because no, it didn't. She moved into a short-term rental in a part of the city I used to associate with good food and art walks. Now it just smelled like a punchline. I heard from someone that she was reinventing herself, freelancing, maybe consulting, trying to reclaim her voice. She could try. But her reputation, once clean and quietly admired, was stained now. Not ruined, but clouded. Some people didn't care. But enough did. The industry's small. Sponsors whisper. Clients disappear. A few mutual friends reached out. Some said they didn't want to take sides. I let them go. If neutrality was their moral compass in a situation this clear, I didn't need their presence. Others, quietly, thanked me. Said they'd had their doubts about Marcus. Or that Ava had changed long before I noticed. Those conversations didn't bring me peace. But they gave me clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't blind. I had trusted someone who didn't deserve it. And when that trust was used against me, I didn't collapse. I responded. With precision. With evidence. With truth. Now, the house is quiet again. I work in the mornings. I cook at night. The air feels clean. They burned what we had. So I made sure there was nothing left for them to stand on. It's been 6 months. The house looks different now. Not because I changed the furniture or knocked down walls. It just feels like mine again. I got rid of the pieces Ava picked, her antique mirrors, the ceramic bowls, the Danish chairs she insisted warmed the room. I replaced them with simpler things. Solid wood. Stainless steel. Sparse, but grounded. I don't need charm right now. I need clarity. There's silence here, the good kind. The kind that lets you hear your own breathing. No more footsteps down the hall I can't place. No more low voices behind a closed door. Just me, and my space. Work is steady. I've taken on a few more projects than I used to, keeps the mind from drifting. I travel more now, too. A few conferences, some advisory roles abroad. It feels good to disappear into cities where no one knows my name or my story. For a few days, I become nobody. A man in a clean suit in a quiet hotel room. A man with control. I don't talk about her unless I'm asked. Most people don't ask anymore. Marcus, as far as I know, is still untangling his finances. Word got around. The damage wasn't just public, it was personal. People stopped trusting him. Stopped inviting him into rooms where decisions get made. He tried reaching out through a mutual friend once. Said he wanted to clear the air. I didn't respond. Some air doesn't deserve to be cleared. Ava's gallery never reopened. She pivoted to small freelance design gigs, interior work mostly. She still has her taste. But the backing's gone. The industry's polite, but doors close quietly when reputations sour. I saw her once, across a courtyard cafe in the South End. She looked thinner. Wore sunglasses even though it was overcast. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and looked away. There's no revenge left to take. That part of the story is over. Now I'm in the middle space, what comes after anger, after strategy, after consequence. Not happiness, not yet. But something quieter. Something cleaner. I've started running again. Ava never liked running, said it was too repetitive, too solitary. I like that about it now. The repetition. The solitude. One foot, then the next. Forward motion, nothing else. No conversation. No questions. Just movement. Some days, I wonder how long it was going on before she told me. I wonder if there were signs I ignored or instincts I buried. But I never stay there long. Wondering is like standing still in wet cement. You think you're processing, but you're just sinking. The truth is, she didn't break me. She exposed something. Not about me, but about herself. About him. About what happens when people want something so badly they convince themselves betrayal is a form of self-expression. Let them carry that. I'm building something else now. Not a revenge arc. Not a comeback. Just a life where I don't have to second-guess the person sleeping beside me. A life where I answer to no one's silence but my own. That's enough. For now.